I don't think Jews own the media. I see somebody saying that. I think that's sort of a misunderstanding. It's really sad and pernicious because, there are a lot of successful sort of races in America. For example, Indian Americans now earn more than any other racial subgroup. Chinese Americans are doing very well as well. What makes one race or people more successful than others, income-wise or status-wise, is hard to understand. It's probably something has to do with family values, education, things like that. And I think it's really toxic to sort of assign blame like, oh, so-and-so controls the media. The media is not controlled by any one race. That's the most preposterous thing in the world. The media, quote unquote, is largely companies that are publicly traded and not controlled by anybody. So if you look at CBS, that's a good example of a publicly traded company, Viacom. And it's it does happen to be that there's Jewish people in media, like Sumner Redstone was one of the legends, created incredible value at Viacom. But I don't think that there's this sort of Jewish influence that is really that relevant. It's just sort of one of these things that people have used anti-Semitism over generations to sort of blame Jews for a lot of things. I think the success of the Jewish people is largely attributed to their intellectual drive and family values that work. Those exact values and mores and systems, they can be criticized as well from other perspectives, but largely from an economical and intellectual perspective. There's a reason there are many Jewish doctors and lawyers and executives and investors. It's been a successful lifestyle that they've sort of inculcated for their families, and that's not any specific family. That's over a mean, and that mean is only slightly sort of more industrious than other racial groups. And we tend not to look at the world like this, and we shouldn't, because it's a kind of very ugly, difficult thing to do. But I also think that we can't help but think about sort of this stuff, and it's hard to do it without sort of a pejorative lens. But I think that to blame any one race for being more successful than the other financially, at least right now, is difficult, because now you have this rise of the Indian American and East Asian American and Chinese American that have become very, very successful. And the question is, will we start blaming them? And I think Europe started blaming Jews after their success in some ways because they were an easy scapegoat. But that'll change quite a bit. I think as people just become more understanding and civilization becomes more civil. But this trope of anti-Semitism is ridiculous. And again, I think Kanye is largely doing some weird transgressive troll art. And I hope that he comes out in a month or 3 months and says, "You guys believe me?" And he shows a video he recorded from a year ago that shows he was going to do this epic troll, and go ahead and reveal that, no, of course he's not a black white supremacist. This is a guy that rapped about Emmett Till and rapped about slavery. This is not a person that, all of a sudden became white supremacist. I think, again, it is possible that this is just a weird bipolar breakdown, which also happened sadly to Bobby Fischer. After he became world chess champion, he went crazy.
Britney Spears and Shia LaBeouf. There's a lot of people who've had these kind of like severe episodes.
Breakdowns are common in Hollywood. And certainly, like I said, I mean, Bobby was the world-class chess player and just went nuts, and became anti-Semitic, right? So that's a really strong parallel here. And I hope that's not what happened. Bobby died in obscurity as a poor man. Some even say homeless. So you just never know. But I do think that Kanye hopefully has something in him. But again, we just don't know. We'll have to see.
I think the anti-Semitism is obviously, truly misplaced. No one should hate, anybody for how they were born or like the culture or group they were born in. For the culture or group they were born in. But Jews are would they be considered a race? Because isn't that like a religion?
That's an age-old question, right? And I think I don't know that we're going to solve it right now. I think
agreed.
That is.
But
yes.
But I think a lot of people's critiques, when they're sometimes kind of holistically blaming the Jews or whatever they're saying,
people to be clear, people don't do that anymore. People haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
There are anti-Semitic people, but there are a very small minority. Nazism is not exactly a fucking popular trend. But it's in the news a lot. But what I think a lot of the critique is sometimes is maybe from the Zionism that type of extremist group that resides in every religion or sect or race is probably what they're referring to. But there's no nuance in kind of the critique, and it's just it is scary. I totally understand. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think, being anti-Semitic by a different name is still anti-Semitism. The average Jewish person is a very nice person like the rest of us. Are there bad Jewish people? Sure. Are there bad black people? Definitely. It's in general, people are people, and, it's wrong to sort of, even assign, some of the most generous people I know are Jewish. So it's really a crazy,
absolutely agree. Yeah,
probably the most generous person I know is Jewish. So it's really just an insane thing to sort of, label a whole people one way or another. And I think Kanye, he knows that he's wrong for doing what he's doing, but he's also trying to be nuanced. And this isn't a subject. This is what I found about drug pricing. This isn't a subject where people want nuance, right? And that I can understand. For drug pricing, I
agree.
I was trying to
just scared to even talk about this.
Yeah, I was trying to force nuance on pharma pricing. With most people don't want nuance when it comes to healthcare. They just want healthcare and they want it for free, and that's it. And I kind of wanted to have that conversation more intellectually, and very few people wanted to engage. And some people wanted to engage. Very few people. Nobody wants to engage on a discussion about this, right? This is just not something anybody wants to talk about.
I was sweating talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the beneficial aspects of Hitler. Are you fucking crazy? Why would anybody want to do that? The guy was a murderous freak. It's the most sort of embarrassing, insane thing to discuss. And again, maybe that's something we should be willing to discuss now that we're 80 years removed from the Holocaust. But it's I don't think there are any, this is, the historical, there are no historical sort of positives to Hitler. And I think it's better that we sort of bury the past in that and not try to whitewash what was basically the most heinous crime in the history of humanity, right? I mean, you can't, when most people say think of the worst possible person, right? I mean, you think of Hitler. It's, and there's a reason for that. So in any event, it is a tough subject, to your point. I mean, I don't want to talk about this either, but Kanye's kind of forced us to have this conversation, and I think that it's sometimes good to reaffirm kind of the universal values that we have as humans, and that the genocidal mania is something that we can all stand against, I think.